Hello, and welcome to the Radical Podcast. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about free will and the lack thereof in our current reality. We're also going to talk about the implications of the lack of free will, why our current institutions and systems are flawed fundamentally because they don't take into account systems and the interplay between them. Okay, so right now I'm going to start off just by going over a few of the logical inconsistencies with the existence of free will, given what we know about the world around us. So, free will is logically inconsistent with the interconnectedness of all of our systems. For example, we are an integral part of the water system. That means that we are conduits for it. Water of our world flows through us and becomes lakes and streams, and then clouds, and then rain, and then oceans and streams, and then us again. It all goes through us. We're part of it. So because we're an interdependent system, we are interdependent systems. Free will is not consistent with that. If you depend on how another system operates in order to go about your daily life, then you are immediately constrained by that. For example, we get thirsty because we run out of water. Our water levels in our bodies go down and we get thirsty. We have to replenish ourselves constantly. And that means that we have to be near a source of water at all times. So we don't exactly have free will already in that sense because we're already constrained in where we can live, where we can be geographically. That's a very simple interplay between systems, incidentally, and it's not horribly constraining. For example, I can tell by the sensation in my bladder that I'm going to have to go to the bathroom sometime in the next 20 minutes. There's no free will involved in that. There might be some will as it is currently conceived of in holding it a little bit longer. But even still, I'm doing that not because I want to. I'm doing that because it's not sanitary or pleasant to wet yourself. So once again, there's constraints because I know the consequences to not working with these systems. So as we can see, just with water, we are dependent on it to make our daily decisions. And there are countless other systems that are exactly the same. Your food sources, for example. You're dependent on your food sources. Without your food sources, you cannot go on. If we decided that, and had the technology, once again, then more constraints, but if we decided that we wanted to go to space and spend 5 years up there right now, we absolutely could not. Without regular replenishment from Earth, because our food source is here. So we don't exactly have free will, even if we have the ability to do something. Sometimes we can't because of basic physical and logical constraints. Now, you might say to me, okay, well, all that means is that we have to use our free will cleverly to work around these systems and so on and so forth. Well, okay, but we're only at the very, very tip of the iceberg here. Another system that interplays with the regular everyday environment is your brain. Your brain is hugely dependent on the world, and not only on the world, but on the exact moment that you're in to create its physical state. And its physical state, of course, is the basis of your thought processes. It's the basis of all of your decisions. Every decision you've ever made and every decision you ever will make, or at least perceive yourself to make, is dependent on the physical state of your brain at that moment in time. The physical state of your brain at any given moment in time is dependent on a number of factors, but all the sensory information that you are processing at that time. For example, through your eyes, ears, taste buds, fingertips, proprioceptors, which are the parts of your body that tell your body where all of its parts are at any given point in time. Your nutrient levels affect how your brain works in its physical state. Your emotional state, whatever's going on in your life, whatever you're dealing with on the ego level, the emotional level, that interplay, the social level. All of these things are going to determine what decisions you make. So there's no will involved there. You're not in charge of the state of your brain. It's simply changing on its own as a result of its interplay with the physical environment that it's in. And if we want to start tying systems together to make it even more complex, then we can look at the water cycle and the brain, the electromagnetic activity throughout the neural net. And we can see that if your water levels are, if you're dehydrated, you don't think properly. You've probably noticed that many times. You feel almost faint, and you will indeed faint if you don't get to water in time. This is only touching, once again, at the very tip of the iceberg of the logical inconsistencies with the notion of free will. We cannot possibly be making our decisions independently using free will if we are dependent constantly in every moment of our lives on the systems within our environment, and when we start going into the notion of consciousness within this podcast, you'll see even further how it's inconsistent. There are several levels up where we can start to theorize about will being involved, but they don't necessarily have to do with your regular day-to-day perception of decision-making. So I'm going to leave it there for now for just discussing logical inconsistencies and just the general fallacy of it. And I'm just going to talk about why it's a problem. Because most people will say, well, it gives comfort. It makes people feel in control. It makes people feel like their lives have meaning. And if you don't have free will, then what's the meaning of life? You know, you're just a puppet on a string being danced around. Once again, like I said, it's not about being a puppet on a string. It's about interplay between systems, and at a certain level, it's about the boundaries between those systems being broken down entirely and recognizing that it's all one thing working together. But if we just want to stay on this level for a little while longer, we can talk about even going about your daily life and about the experience of making decisions, or the experience of watching the decisions happen anyways, and how that's a valuable process. We'll get into that later. Right now we're talking about societal implications of the whole thing, and really it is actually irrelevant whether or not it's calming or comforting. It's irrelevant whether or not it gives meaning to life, because it's just factually wrong. So whatever meaning you're getting out of it is entirely an illusion or delusion on the part of the person who's experiencing it. And of course that's not your fault. It's not your fault because you have no reason to disbelieve free will. You've been told all your life you have it, and the way that nature plays tricks on us also contributes to us believing that we have free will, because we watch the decisions happening within our minds as our minds are working within the concert of life. So it's a little bit like watching a trumpet player play along with an orchestra and imagining that he's using his free will to play the song, but really he has to play that way for everything to work in sync and for the song to come out the way the composer intended. I'm not actually theorizing of a divine composer here, like an Abrahamic God or something, but I'm just saying that we're playing within a harmony. And we have to stay within that harmony or things don't work. So the societal implications, mostly within the justice system, mostly within the way that we blame people, and also the way that we give people credit for things. Now, if we accept that we don't have free will and that we're just all systems operating in concert, then it's really hard to give any individual credit for their accomplishments on an individual scale. Because, once again, everything is a product of everything else working together. There's no harm in this. In fact, it's wonderful to consider that we're all working together to manifest our world, our dreams. We're manifesting together an entire society. But because we're manifesting one that puts blame on people and then unduly credits others, we end up with this really dysfunctional system where people also start to blame themselves and to hate themselves for things they had absolutely no control in. Traumas that you've inflicted on others or that others have inflicted on you. It doesn't make it acceptable. It doesn't make it something that we should simply contend with because it's built into us to correct problems. That's not something we have will over. It's simply something that we do. We identify and we solve problems. And when we're working logically, we can identify those problems correctly. But when we're simply blaming people, we're only going to perpetuate logical inconsistencies and dysfunction. Because we're not working within the system that we actually have, we're working within a system that we wish we had. And obviously that's not connected to the reality we live in. So when we put people in prison and we punish them severely, they blame themselves, And it creates an overarching cycle of blame and hatred and simple ugliness of human spirit. And we can see why it's wrong. It's quite on the face of it wrong to do anything of that sort. But we persist nonetheless because we want to be able to take those credit for those accomplishments. And if we can't blame others, then we can't take that credit and we can't feel that pride in the things that we do. But ultimately, we can feel collective pride and we can feel collective disappointment when someone is violent or someone is harmful or does absolutely horrific things. But we have to recognize that it's a product of these systems. And the only way that we'll ever stop perpetuating these cycles of horrible actions on the levels of pedophilia and animal abuse and serial killing and mass shootings and so on is if we stop blaming and we start addressing the systems that perpetuate the problem. Systems of poverty, inequity, etc. Because we have a system right now that places undue individual responsibility on people, we make it absolutely impossible to solve these problems in any reasonable way. Because we're not looking at the root of the problem. We're only looking at symptoms, and we're trying to catch up with symptoms as they increase, which is simply impossible unless you address the root cause, which is our inability to see reality as it is. And there's lots of reasons for that too, none of which we have any will over. But that is where I'm going to leave it at today. I welcome all of your comments, criticisms, concerns, death threats, and etc. And I certainly hope to hear lots of feedback from everyone listening right now. Thank you for your time, and I'll be back later this week with another Radical podcast. I'm Ryan McKenna. Have a great day.